Hello, podcast lovers. Thank you so much for coming back. I'm your host, Žana, and today I'm so excited that I'm speaking to an incredible woman. I actually wanted to attend one of her amazing mastermind networking meetings, which is called Babes in Business. And when we had our initial private conversation about her networking mastermind, somehow my podcast came up, and I figured she might be such a wonderful guest to have. And Alissa, I'm so grateful and I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you for taking out time in your life. I know you're so busy, but thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited for our conversation today. So thank you and welcome.
It is a pleasure to be here. Honestly, after we had a first one or two conversations one-on-one, I just thought, this energy is something I want to invest in. When I spend too much time being busy out there and not enough time like
Yeah.
having conversations that fuel me, it gets off
Yeah.
balance. So like honestly, this is a gift to me too. Thank you for having me.
Oh, that's so kind of you. And I'm so with you when you say, like energy drives energy and it really fills us when we have meaningful conversations. And sometimes that's so much worth in actually making a deal with somebody or like actually getting a new client in our boat. Because I know we both are entrepreneurs, which is really going to be our major topic today. As entrepreneurial women. And, in specific, when I first started talking to you and when I first saw many synergies that we had, what really stuck out to me was the fact that we need to somehow find our strength to stand in our own truth of who we are and also still allow, the person that we were that helped us to get to the part where we are today, those parts of our life and the characteristics that we still had and still managed to master a little bit better or kind of wanted to leave them completely away. And so, standing in our own truth, is really something for me when you said energy driven conversation that drives one another. I figured that for myself later in life, in all honesty, that was really something that I needed to have in my life, that really fuels my life, and it gives me drive of really knowing that this is a good thing to do. So yeah, right.
High five. Yeah. Know where the camera's at. High fives all.
Right. High five. Yeah, but I know that since you are an entrepreneur, and I wanted to kind of like dive in a little bit deeper in your in your private life, where do you feel your entrepreneurial vein got kind of like created and got placed into your life? Where did that in a sense start for you?
Wow. I think it was like almost like an unspoken assumption from
Mhm.
before I knew the logistics of the world. When I was a young baby, maybe 2 or 3 weeks old, my weekday afternoons were spent on a boat with my parents in the sunshine.
Mhm.
And I just, that lifestyle of having the freedom to be able to choose your way of living has always been attractive to me. So growing up in a family business where, that's your first job, you don't get to leave it at work. It comes home with you at dinner. It was just all I really knew. So there was actually a shock to me when I entered the corporate world and people didn't think that way and people's experience of work wasn't that way. Even when I had some part-time jobs as a teenager, it kind of gave me this little, huh. So when I was told get a good job and go, out in the workforce and, punch a clock, I just thought, um, I don't know that I really know what that looks like because I've seen the model.
Right.
So I really got the bug after having been certified as a financial planner and done the ins and outs of working in Manhattan for a large bank and doing wealth management and administration in that arena. I remember my mentor at the time telling me, don't run away from things, run towards something. And I said,
Mhm.
I had explored a couple of MLM style businesses at that time and thought, I really want to do something where I can wear my own wardrobe to work and I can really like make an impact and see the people that I'm making a difference for. And financial services didn't really have that ring for me. So,
Right.
um, yeah, I started looking for different ways to create my lifestyle because I tried all the things everybody else told you you're supposed to do. You know, you go to college, you get a job, you work in finance, apparently. That was like the thing I heard that everybody did. Um, but growing up in an environment where, Sundays, Saturdays and Sundays were our busy days, and then Mondays and Tuesdays were like, okay, we'll do the logistics stuff, but then we're free to roam for the rest of the week. That was really inspiring to me. And so I've kind of modeled my life and my business after that, being able to have life in the forefront and work as a supporting role rather than the other way around that, the universe or the current culture would have us believe that it's work first and then it's your life.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's exactly what is kind of like the norm that we always, kind of like grew up and around, like that whole, okay, you got to have a degree, you got to have this, you got to have that in order to be successful. And, for me, it like, I mean, I really never got a degree because I felt like pressured I had to. I got a degree because I really loved what I was doing. And I just wanted to see if with this degree, I can climb up my ladder in my industry, and it wasn't really like a driving force of like, I got to do this and I got to do that because, I didn't feel the need of doing specific things. And yet, I had the privilege of stumbling into amazing positions and amazing workforces where my craft was speaking for me, like just the way I executed things. And of course, I had a degree to back it up, but it's like that. It's like kind of like that brain, how do you call that when people tell you this is how it's supposed to be and this is how it's supposed to be versus we're not really allowing ourselves anymore to really decide, is this really something that feels good to me, is this really something that absolutely makes sense to me? Because of course in our 20s we have a different mindset than in our 30s and 40s, like that's just a given thing too. But yeah, I find it so interesting also, when you said that on the weekends were your busy days and that you're so fascinated about the lifestyle that you, felt like, okay, we have the privilege to be on the boat and we have the privilege to kind of like, you know, live life in a sense too. And so I wonder if that thought form really was equally saying to you that I gotta be my own boss at one point in order to achieve that. Was that kind of like the thought that came with it, where it's like, okay, if I'm not my own boss, I won't have this privilege. Therefore, I want to work towards becoming my own boss and an entrepreneur. Because as an entrepreneur, you are your own boss, right? And but it's
True.
but it's challenging too. You know what I
So
mean? Like,
I will say that there is a very distinct difference between I want my life and I want it to be at the forefront and I want to be my own boss because having a parent as a boss is just like you're my parents. You're going to tell me what to do all the time in my formative years and all this stuff. So
yeah.
honestly, my desire to be my own boss didn't come till probably my mid 20s when I realized I went to school, I got the jobs, I did the things, and I kept having this attitude problem. And like everywhere that I went, I would grow and do some creative things. Like I was, filling my head with new learning and meeting new people and um, expanding my career. And then, oh, I would hit this point where like I couldn't grow anymore. Or like
Mhm.
my opinions were like I wasn't at a titled place that like my opinions or creative growth strategy wasn't like my role. And like
Yeah.
I got pissed. So like I kept moving places. And so this is actually part of my personal success journey is that at the time where I would hit these upper limits or hit these resistance points where I didn't feel I was doing anything growing and I felt like I was dying instead,
Mm.
I would cut bait, find something else that was more inspiring to me and begin a new segment of my journey. But also, it was part of my shame because I had to overcome everybody else's wagging mouths about why do you keep quitting? Why do you keep resetting? What's wrong with you? Why can't you hold
Mm.
a job? I mean, can anybody relate to this story? Like this was the sickness, the mental like wheel of looping horrible
Yeah.
thoughts that I had to sit there and reflect like, am I lazy? Is the re
Yeah.
do I am I just a really nasty person where I can't work with people anymore? And so like I had to reflect on all these things. Why do I keep hitting these walls and getting an attitude problem and then looking for something else? And in my healed story, now that I've done this so many times in my life that like I sing it, dog. My dog really wants my attention right now. But I had done this so many times that I reflected, and after a certain point, I was like, no, this is me not
Mm,
settling. This is me
mm.
not wanting to be told what to do, even though I could see that there were improvements to be made. There were
Right,
skills that I had that could be leveraged or that I could give to a team, but that didn't want to hear it. And so having that exposure to like, I'm not going to settle for what makes me feel like I'm dying or like I'm just putting up with things because you have to get the gold watch from being at this company for so long, or
right.
report to the boss who's the person who tells you whether or not you're good enough or tells you
Right.
whether or not you are worthy of your position or you know so I think my attitude problem about wanting to become my own boss came from some really good bosses who were amazing mentors to me, but also seeing ways that it could be improved. And I thought, well, I got to take this show on the road. There's no way I'm going to be able to be self-determined and live the lifestyle I want because every box I looked in that I jumped in, tried out, and then jumped out of, it didn't fit. And it wasn't
Hmm.
going to fit. And after I realized that, after doing it umpteenth times, I realized, oh, I got to take matters into my own hands.
Hmm. Yeah, I can absolutely relate to that because, especially when you said, that you are not in the position where whatever you had suggested, which would have been maybe an improvement to the entire environment, was not even heard because simply you didn't have the title, right? And so I know that from my own career, I've been many, many, many times in positions like that, but yet I still voiced my opinion. And then that caused some problems where either it was from their side to say, okay, we can't with you. You just got here and you have all these suggestions. But interestingly enough, when I then left, all of those suggestions that I actually had said while I was there, they were implemented afterwards. And I know that for a fact because I still had friends that worked at the place, or I would go back. And this doesn't just happen to me in one place, it happened in multiple places,
Yep.
where I was like, wow, this is so interesting, you know. But I can understand now also better. And I love how you broke it down, like that your healed self really understands today that it was just your soul screaming of like, I am not wanting to settle for this. This is not why I came here. This is not why I was created to do this. And in all honesty, there is some people in this world, they simply cannot take orders from anybody. It's one thing, I feel like, to take a good, fair, professional criticism and really be set down by a good person or a mentor and to be like really teached, and explained like, look, this characteristics, we can work on that, or why don't you change your viewpoint and here and there. But I feel like there's some people that are so into their own title that all it matters to them is just that they have that title. They have no people skills. They have no idea how to really execute, how to really help you to become better, to actually file the diamond that you were, and just to make it more shinier and more brighter, right? And so not everybody has that gift of having, I'm good with logistics and I'm good with paperwork, but also I'm good with people, right? And so some leaders really have that one thing really good down and some just have the other, but it's really challenging to have both kind of like intertwined and balanced and harmonized in a person. And for me, I feel like that was my driver, where I was like, you know what, I cannot always have one or the other. If I were ever to be my own boss and if I ever were to execute my own dream, this is what I will do. I will have both, where I allow the person to be who they are, but also in a sense help them to grow.
And that I think is the perfect mix of why I think entrepreneurship is
Mhm.
the best personal development on the planet. Like, if you've ever heard
Right.
me speak, you've heard me say entrepreneurs save the world because we're always putting those two things together, not only what's functional, but also seeing what's possible in continuing to foster growth. Because
Right.
without seeing the problem for what it is, an opportunity and a challenge to create something new, and then seeing on our side as the solution provider, who else needs to be in here? Because I'm good at this one piece, which may be minor, may be major, but like it always takes a team. And entrepreneurship for me has been that lesson of knowing, we're the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with as a person, but also in our profession. We need a bench of people who surround what it is that we do in the center of our genius to be able to turn around and say, okay, this is upstream from me. You're going to need this kind of professional. You're going to need this kind of advice. After you're done working on your strategy with me, you're going to
Right.
need to turn around and look, who do you need to help you implement that strategy, and knowing how to figure out the right people for you. And for me, the right people for me are the people who have deep and interesting conversations, and the ones who are willing to look at things differently and not pretend that they know everything all the time. And
Right.
that's a really important distinction of my growth path, because in those places where I felt like I was not growing, I was dying, most often the personality type that I met was, I know everything, don't worry, just do it this way. And
Mm.
I'm a creator, and at the heart, entrepreneurship is about creating new and better value.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's new and better. And then it's also just like improving of what we have. Because sometimes, we just got to work with what we have and we have to really make it work, but still yet be an innovator about that, you know, like instead of that whole thing of like, okay, this is always have been, we always did it this way. It's always have been done this way for many, many, many years. Okay, that's fine. But why not explore? Why not allow yourself to kind of like dive out of your box and see something else with another set of eyes? Because what I always like to point out is when we come together and we use a many brains and many people of different talents and we put it all in a bucket and we all brainstorm, oh my god, what magic can be created, but I also want to kind of understand a little bit better when you were in that growth process of really almost understanding on that breakthrough, right? Like you haven't figured out quite yet that you're actually dying inside of you and you're actually holding yourself back and you're actually allowing other people to dim your light, but you felt it already, right? What were those pivotal moments? Can you remember maybe like some moments where you're like, oh my God, I get it now. Like this is exactly what happens to me all the time. Like this, the same scenario might be a same person, it might be a same like a different situation, different person, but the scenario, the content, the core would be always the same where you felt empty.
Yeah.
And when was that pivotal moment for you where you're like, you know what, this is it. Like I know now that I need to be breaking out of this somehow.
I mean, so I have examples from my personal life that are very poignant. So I'll go there instead, because professionally it
Cool.
always mirrors. So when I was looking for love in all the wrong places, I finally found someone for me who was funny and witty and, adventurous and fun. And I doubled down on that relationship. We were bound to move in together. And over time, we had a couple things that we disagreed on. And over time, I started feeling this like distance, this like pulling away, and my tendency that learned how to identify in the long run, because I needed to for survival, was to, as I felt the pulling away, to go even more intensely, even harder at the relationship. And then I would feel even more
More.
pulling away. And to the point where when that relationship finally ended, it ended in such spectacular destruction fireworks. Like I moved in stuff and signed a lease, and like the day he was supposed to move in, he dumped me for this chick who was a drug addict. And by the way, he was gonna go experiment with it. How did I not see that coming? Right? Like all like my shiny, rosy, kumbaya self and my, worry wart person, like they collided that day. And I had to realize like my worry wart was hearing my kumbaya and saying like, okay, I guess we need to do more because this situation isn't perfect. What more can we do? How more responsible can we be? And the thing that I identified as the catalyst that I can be weary of now without having to fall into spectacular destruction is when I start to become over responsible in a situation.
Mm,
And so the reason I didn't like want to see that coming is because I kept burying my head in the sand thinking, I know how to fix this. And as I kept doing more and more things to quote unquote fix this, I didn't even know that I was really understanding that that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to overcompensate for someone
mm,
else's lack or for someone else's disconnect. And so
mm,
imagine it took me almost 2 years to rebuild my identity after that spectacular hurt and disruption of my life. But it was the biggest blessing to me because now I was able to see my tendency to
mhm,
take more than my share on that isn't my core genius. It's like when you
mm,
spread yourself so thin, you're not really valuable in any one space. So that to me was a gift in this whole destruction was that I was able to see that. And now as a mother and as a businesswoman, when I see myself taking over responsibility for my clients or over responsibility for my kids, I actually got the t-shirt that said, I'm not bossy, I'm just aggressively helpful. Like to laugh at it because that is the
yeah.
tendency that I love, but I also need to
Mhm,
recognize when it's trying to
mhm,
overcompensate for something where I can tell myself the truth faster. I need to be
mhm,
able to tell myself the truth faster because it's not going to
mhm,
hurt me. It's going to hurt me more in the long run if I don't stop and think and adjust my sails in the current.
mhm. Yeah, I so understand that, especially when we are like really, like you said, and it could be in any relationship, right? It could be romantically, it could be in business, could be with our kids, where we just feel the need when we do not understand our boundaries well, where we do not understand how our cup needs to be filled in an appropriate way, where we have enough for ourselves without being selfish. You know what I mean? But just with just really being healthy, respectfully respecting our own self enough to be like, you know what, this is literally what I can give you today. And this is where it stops for me. And either you come with me and we have a nice reciprocity ping pong situation where we both give to each other and we both receive, or I won't even engage anymore. But I also know how it feels when you are into something so deeply emotionally involved where you seem to be like, okay, this has to work for me because I pictured it in my head, in my vision, it looked this way.
Yeah.
And I need to remind myself this is the vision that I created, therefore it must have a meaning. And so if it doesn't have a meaning, what do I do then? But it's too scary to think about what do I do then. So I'm rather going to make it work here and give my full blown effort and actually start to lose myself in the process too. Because I don't know how you felt, but like, it sounded like that at one point of like just giving and giving and giving. Where was Alissa? What were you giving? Like, did you even consider giving anything to yourself? Was that even a logical thought ever where it's like, okay, wait, I'm pouring here, but have I poured myself actually a nice cup of coffee today? Did I actually do something really nice for me to kind of like make me feel whole and together and happy? And I feel like when we really being in that survival mode, which happens so often also being just a business owner, when we desperately want this client or we think we need this client so badly that we're working out of a lack. Like you're working out of a need and this desperational need, which I'm not saying is not real, because listen, if you got bills to pay and this client doesn't come through, this sucks. Like I need this client to come through, right? But when we work out of that need, that inner whatever, I feel like all we do is just pull that negative red string that was created somewhere over here, and now it shows up again in this place where it's like, why are you here again? You're not a romantic partner to me, but yet this feels the same way where I'm over giving, trying to make it work so hard.
Yeah. And I think there's a big distinction between being generous with
Yeah,
yourself and
right.
uh the due to deserve model. And the thing that I was thinking of as I was hearing you say about all the giving and the over giving, and where did I fill my own cup? And
Right.
like I'm thinking, yeah, I have filled my own cup. Like I need to, but it's the attachment that I have to let go of. So let me just explore this for 1 second. When you have an
Sure.
attachment to an outcome, like you said, I built this vision, it has to be this way. I envisioned all the details, I put it up on my vision board, it's red, you know, um,
Oh,
when we're attached to the way
mm,
something, an outcome must look, we are
mm,
also limiting our ability to create something even better or be able to accept that that vision brought us in motion, but it gets to look differently as it begins to be created in our world. So when we're so attached to the way we think things have to be,
mhm,
we are missing the bigger picture of allowing it to be even better or even
mhm,
vastly different, because when we create a vision, we are tactically in a different space, a different mindset than when we're in motion. A friend of mine
right.
always says, it's the planning that's important. The plans become irrelevant the day that they're published. And so having that attachment to outcome is something that I had to, again, by many, 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 many iterations of, planning and then
Right.
considering myself a failure, but then looking back and thinking, no, well, I learned a couple of things. There's a really great children's book out there called The Most Magnificent Thing. And I read it to my kids, and it beautifully describes this process of like, I did this thing, I made this contraption because I had an idea and it didn't quite work out. Okay, I'll try something else. And then I did it again and it didn't work. And after the 75th time where it didn't work, oh, it must just not work at all. And then walking backwards through all the iterations, going, but this piece did work. And this might work better if I put it together in a different place. And the main character walked backward through all of her inventions and wound up creating the most magnificent thing because she had all the practice, all the failure, all the iterations. And that
Yeah.
iteration, the iterativeness, is what had
Right.
me let go of my
Right.
attachments. High
Right.
intention with what you're seeking to achieve or what you're looking to accomplish or create, low
Mhm.
attachment. Because the attachment is the piece of lack thinking, well, if I let this go, then it's gone.
Then
Or
it's gone.
nothing,
Right.
nothing good will have happened. Well, I call
Right. Or I did it for nothing.
yes. Yep,
Mhm.
exactly.
Right, right, exactly. And yeah, so I mean, it's kind of like pivoting too, just really allowing, when they say like going with the flow, and for years I really had no idea what that really meant. I mean, it sounded always so amazing, go with the flow and just enjoy life every day. And I'm like, what the hell are these people talking about? I know how, what do you mean? My life is hell right now. What are you
What is
talking
that?
about? What is that? But really like looking back and the way and I really love how you just broke that down because it was so visually so easy to follow, at least for me, because when I heard you talk, like all the visual pieces just bubbled together. But I really loved when you said, that the pivoting moments, like really allowing yourself to pivot and just really ride that wave and just it's okay if you fail. You know what I mean? Because now even looking back at certain things in my life, I'm like, you know what? Thank you. I'm so grateful. I'm seriously so grateful that this had happened because if this would have never happened to me, and trust the things I'm saying, there are awful things that had happened to me. Really, really heartbreaking, really hard to get through, really like just sad, heartbreaking. But now I'm so happy that they happened because without that, I would have never just even considered taking the time to jump in my own soul journey and literally don't do anything for 2.5 years other than just focusing on my own self and really diving deeper into what had really happened. What was this really for? And how did those pieces really then fundamentally connected together in order for me to now have this outcome, what I'm doing currently right now?
Yeah.
And so it's just so interesting to yeah, just to actually really just allow yourself to be, like with your flaws, with your failures, just instead of like, oh my God, I'm such a failure. I messed this up again. Okay, it's good to have self-reflection. I'm with that. But it's also okay to be like, you know what, this, like, I suck at this in the moment, and that's okay. I accept that. But I don't want to be. And if I really don't want to be, I'll find a way to get better at that and just leave it at that without that emotional pressure, without that mental pressure of like, okay, you see, you messed up again and you will never get it right or whatever, whatever. Because for me, that was a long part of my life, that specific characteristics I couldn't manage to handle. I seriously could not master them for the life of me. And it would bring a lot of looping, and it would bring a lot of setbacks and a lot of times, oh, here you are again. You see, you did it again. You did it again.
Yeah, we're never going to silence that voice. We're just going to learn
No.
how to love it for what it's actually telling us.
Right.
Because, as I've trained many people, because I've walked the path, I had to learn first so that I could turn around and see it for others, that you win some or you learn some. And that is always the case no matter what. So all of these feelings of failure, again, like telling myself the truth faster rather than trying to convince myself of something and having it blow up spectacularly.
Yeah.
So telling yourself the truth is very important, even though oftentimes, like, so you're never going to get rid of that. Oh, here I did it again. Oh, I failed again.
Right.
That voice is your inner critic that you get to train to be your inner coach. Because if you
Hmm.
hadn't had all those experiences, you wouldn't be who you are today. If I
Hmm.
hadn't had two two or three very spectacular breakups in my life, I wouldn't have been able to be a good business partner or a good wife. So knowing that those lessons that we learn, we can turn around and say thank you for them. But also when you're in the moment, a little piece that you can bring with you is that this is not the defining moment. It feels very intense right now. And later, I'm going to look back and see what it has to teach me. But I learned not to make decisions in that mind space. And
Hmm.
sometimes it lasts for a while. And sometimes you learn how to shorten it. But when you're in the space of like going through the emotional roller coaster of just having done something and it went sideways or didn't go the way you expected it, or you're judging yourself hard, going, I must really suck.
Right.
Let those voices have their space, but just know in your heart, like, okay, when this feeling passes, I'll be able to look in and ask the real questions, but I can't ask those questions from here and get answers from here that are going to bring me forward. Because when we
Hmm.
act from that place, we create more of where that place came from. So
Hmm.
that was
Yeah.
another habit I had to break, was making like paranoid decisions in the middle of bad occurrences that created more opportunity in my life for worse. Oh, I mean, like sometimes it takes a lot of skinning your knees to understand you gotta wear knee pads. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, exactly. But I also feel like, the more, for me, at least personally, the more I really incorporated specific habits in my life, like just, created a different lifestyle for me, where, for instance, I started to take supplements. I started to really, I got into painting. I started really deeply meditating and having prayer time in my own solitude way. And as more as I incorporated specific things that specifically worked for me, I felt a shift inside of me too. That hasty personality, that hasty voice that you just said was not necessarily completely silenced and dead, but it was so quiet that because of my daily new life circle routines that I created that really worked for me, the first thing then I learned to be just like, you know what? Let me take a breather. It's okay. I acknowledge the problem. I acknowledge there's something here that I don't like. I haven't figured out who caused it yet. What did I contribute? Because, it's really good to also be like, what did I actually bring to the table to make this happen the way it did happen? But once I figure that out, then it's just like taking a break. For me, I pray and then I feel better. I'll go for my run or I do, something more creative where I'm just like, I'm taking a step back from that for a moment versus dwelling on it and looking at it like, okay, this is always in my mind. This is still a problem. Yeah, it's still a problem. And that's okay that it's still a problem. But that doesn't mean that you cannot enjoy your day for today because the problem won't just get legs and run away. Yeah, it will be there. It will also be there the next morning. So just navigating, I feel like, when I hear you talk, I feel like that you learned how to really for yourself navigate which each and every step of like, okay, this is what's happening, but here is my new learned tool that I'm implementing with
Yeah.
myself. And here's now the outcome that is still somehow not to my likings completely, but it's way better than when I haven't had this little process with myself, how the outcome would have been if without my little created own process. Because not every process works for everybody. People say go and meditate. And some people are like, dude, like I have no patience right now to sit there and stare a hole in the wall. Like I can't, like I don't know. And some people are like journaling. I don't know what to say. I'm angry. Here, I write anger. That's all I have to say, So not every technique works for every person, but I feel like by really diving in with your own self and actually spending time in solitude, I learned so much about myself. Did you ever have that with you
100,000.
too?
100,000%. Yeah.
Right?
The meditative things and creating, so like I have bookends now in my day, waking up and having quiet solitude time, and then walking around and filling up my water containers and watering the plants, stretching, paying attention to what my body's feeling like. Morning pages, which I learned from The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Writing things down. Writing the things down that are top of mind right there in the
Mm,
morning without needing to put the plan in action. Swimming.
right.
So giving myself literally as much space as I possibly can every day to just be before I
Mhm.
jump into the doing. A lot of what I have done for myself is create the space of being first, because when I'm at my best, then my productivity is better. And then at the
Yeah.
end of the day, acknowledging myself for what went well. Yes, we're all going to have our rolling to-do lists and the never-ending checklists of tasks, but
Right.
acknowledging myself what went well, making sure I'm reading that which fuels me so it sets me up for a better next tomorrow. Having these two bookends and putting these personal habits in place have reduced my amount of stress, even though the things that I do today probably would have caused me of 5 years ago infinitely more stress, because it's more complicated perhaps, or it's my business has grown so much. So, but I can handle it now with grace because of these
Yeah.
habits of, filling my cup, making sure I'm doing things that center me to me, and
Mhm.
sitting and going om and meditating for an hour, it's not something that I can tactically do, but drawing and writing and reading, they have that same effect for me. I'm reflecting on my life. I'm allowing my creative self to come through, and making
Yeah.
that a priority allows me to do everything else that is a tactical priority in my life, the doing of life, the doing of business. It allows it to flow more effortlessly because I don't
Mhm.
feel like I have to do that first in order to fill my cup. Because when we have
Right,
it
right.
inside out, upside down, and backwards, it's like panic mode. Like you said, this hasty feeling of like, I
Mm.
have to do this so that I can finally relax, or so that I can finally pay
Right.
attention to myself. No, do it first.
Right. Yeah, I'm with it. I'm so with it, really, honestly. And this is not to say, that we are sitting around for the first 5 hours of the day and doing that, but it's certainly to say, you know what? I prioritize myself. I prioritize simply how I feel in this moment. And if my body is happened to tell me I have this really bad headache or I don't feel that good today, I need to take a 10-minute, 30-minute extra nap, then that needs to happen. And if that happens to happen in a meeting that I have, maybe I even reconsider rescheduling the meeting. This is not a norm thing, but I feel like when we prioritize our own body, mind, spirit, and soul, above anything and everything that is going on in the external world, you know, things like you said, they just work more effortlessly. You know what I mean? Because we respect now really our temple. We respect our thoughts. We're not pushing them away, not the good ones, not the bad ones either. They're all part of us. So, I loved when you said when those negative looping thoughts come that would pressure you or they would tell you something, to just allow them in too and actually really acknowledge them and be like, you know what? I acknowledge you. You're allowed to be here. That's okay. Hello. And now I need you to leave. Like, thanks for showing up, but I don't need you at all today. You can go now. But instead, it's like, oh my God, okay. And then I'm forcefully trying to think of something good, but then this thing comes back in, and it's just okay. Then just let it come in. let it come in, and the same way you allowed it to come in, you allow it to leave. And I feel like, once I really understood for me that everything happens in my mind, and I am
Yeah.
actually the driver of every single thought that is coming through, that I'm at least holding on to consciously and allowing myself to think over and over and over. And once I catch myself, I'm like, ooh, you're thinking about this the third time already. Ooh, you're starting to be a little, what's happening? And then I stop. And in my healing journey, I was like, I would have literally self conversations with myself. This sounds so weird, but I literally did it face to face in the mirror. And I would ask myself, okay, Jana, why are you mad? I'm mad because, and then I would tell myself why I'm mad. Okay, are you mad because of the person? Are you triggered? Is it an old wound? What's happening? And then I would have self conversation with myself. This is no lie, this is a true story, for maybe 10, 15 minutes until really I figured out where this was coming from. And they slowed down those conversations because now I know how to manage that with internally. But I started with myself like that because I didn't know how other else to help myself. And for me, that really worked, you know?
Yeah. You have to be able to acknowledge the pattern, observe the pattern, and then
Right.
form the pattern.
Yeah,
Because the pattern
exactly.
will only change little piece at a time. They say the human body is made up of however many trillions of cells, but that there every 7 years is completely new cells than were there 7 years ago. So
Yeah.
like we are changing little tiny piece at a time. And if we allow the little tiny habits to build over time, amazing shifts can happen in the long run. Um, you know, so I mean, I have plenty of examples from my life, but in this conversation alone, we've kicked over at least half a dozen ways to catch yourself in patterns of behavior that are not
Mhm.
befitting or not fulfilling, and be able
Mm.
to take that as information and inform and innovate for ourselves the next time. My morning routine started out as just drinking water. As soon as I swung my legs off the side of the bed, have a glass of water at the bedside, drink water. Okay, drink water and then stretch. Okay, drink water and stretch for 5 minutes more. Drink water, so like it's little tiny habits that you can build over time. But it's amazing what can happen because we don't recognize the incremental shifts over time. But if you do it
Mm.
intentionally, that's where exponential shifts come from, because you see something worth moving towards and you make
Right.
adjustments every single day.
Right, exactly. And you stay with it. It's the consistency part of it too, like either you with it or you're not. You know what I mean? Like if you're really trying to break a habit or really trying to change maybe like a characteristics, which for me in my personal life, that was the hardest thing for me. Changing a characteristic of mine. That was very challenging for me. It was very hard, but I was so determined because I didn't like that part of me. I didn't like that specific characteristic on me and I wanted it to be gone. I just never figured out a tool of how I can make it go away and not come back. I didn't want it to dismiss that part of me, but I didn't needed it anymore. Like it didn't serve me. It didn't serve my soul. It didn't serve my surroundings. It certainly didn't serve my higher self. So I'm like, why are you here? What are you for? Like, I need you to exit my temple, right? And so with ideas that you just said, for me, that worked perfectly. Everybody's idea could be, like we said, differently, but I think this is a great kickoff to be like, you know what, if there's something in your life you really don't like, or you feel like it's a repetitive thing that constantly occurs, this is an idea of how you can actually start to get rid of it. By just, there's a saying, if you keep doing what you're doing, you will always receive the same results that you always receive, right? So you need to change something in order to get something else. And why not change with yourself? Why not change with yourself? Because I truly believe every person in this planet has something internally. They might not share it openly and honestly, but they know inside of them that this is something they don't like about themselves. Maybe start with that. Like start with something that, is just doesn't feel good to you when you do that to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right on.
But yeah, but it's crazy how we, how we are allowing in that process our light to be dimmed and to be kind of like put in that little box of like, okay, great. she hasn't catched the concept yet, so I can put her in that box and she'll go with it. You know, she'll be in the box. We can dim her light and without her even knowing, because she's still in her transformational force or whatever. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, me too. This was such a great talk. You know, I feel like we went in a different direction that we actually originally had spoken about, but I think this was so insightful, and you dropped so many golden nuggets. You know, you're such a wise human being, you know, on top of it being so kind and such a beautiful person. So I'm thankful that I brought these nuggets, you know, that I was privileged to have your nuggets on my podcast, because this is what we need, you know. We need people to share their wisdom and just their own personal stories of like, this is how I did it for me. Maybe this can be something for you too. So I'm so grateful for you, Alicia, that you shared your stories, and you know, thank you for coming.
It's my pleasure. Again, you know, to me, being an entrepreneur is being vulnerable, open, and willing to explore learning from everywhere. Learning just doesn't
Mm.
happen where we think it's going to come from. So thank you for letting me share the inspired stories that came through because of our connection. Like there's to me, the world of wash, rinse, repeat is a way to go about life, but it isn't the way life actually happens. It's a structure that helps us to put things in perspective. And I've had
Mhm.
such a wonderful time talking to you today, and to
Yeah.
everybody listening. Thank you so much. I'm available. Hit me up on socials at Consultress. Happy to be of service and value.
Yes, absolutely. I'll share your link definitely in the description. You know, I'm pretty sure that there's maybe, you know, there's might be definitely an interest in connecting and working with you. And so I'll definitely share everything in the description below this episode. So if there's somebody out there wants to connect to Alicia, you can right here now.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you. And for you podcast lovers, another great one. Like always, if there's anything you have on your heart, if there's maybe something you want to share with me, my mic is yours. Come and join me in this amazing, amazing, amazing movement of R&R. Be a part of this community. But until then, stay grounded, stay rooted, and always stay connected to love, the strongest force in the universe.